On this episode of Weather Watch, we get an exclusive look at how Pennsylvania's most famous amusement park reacts when the weather turns sour. Then, we continue our countdown to the #1 Northeast Snowstorm with the Weather Watch Top 5. Finally, our experts give us the details on what we can expect in this upcoming winter season. All this and more coming up on Weather Watch. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Weather Watch, Millersville University's exclusive weather news program. I'm your host, Megan Nielsen. To get us started off, let's bring you up to date with the weather that has made headlines around the globe over the past few weeks. Here's your weather in 60 seconds. Tornadoes in Portugal, flooding in Italy, and Hurricane Sandy raging through the east coast of the United States highlight this edition of Weather in 60 Seconds. Starting off in southern Portugal, where a tornado ripped through a soccer stadium, causing uprooted trees and overturned cars. This event left 8 people injured, hundreds without a home, and many areas suffered flooding. Tornadoes are not common in Europe, but do occur occasionally in the northwest and south of the continent. Moving now to Italy, where 3 days of heavy rains and wind has left parts of the country underwater. 9 inches of rain fell in a few short hours in Tuscany, overflowing many rivers surrounding the city. Hundreds of people were forced to flee their homes as rivers burst their banks and streets were flooded. Some were rescued from rooftops by helicopters. Finally, moving along to the United States, where Hurricane Sandy slammed into the east coast of the country. The superstorm made landfall in New Jersey, bringing with it damaging winds, heavy rain, and even snow in parts of Maryland, West Virginia, and Ohio. The storm caused an estimated $60 billion in damage and has left many residents of New Jersey and New York without a home. And that will do it for this edition of Weather in 60 Seconds. On this season of Weather Watch, we debuted the Weather Watch Top 5. Pete Molinax has been counting down to the #1 Northeast Snowstorm all season long, and we have finally arrived at the #1 storm. Let's find out which one topped our list.
This is it. We have finally come to our #1 Northeast snowstorm on our countdown. Let me start by saying that the other 4 Northeast snowstorms were unforgettable and paralyzed much of the Northeast, but there can only be one Northeast snowstorm to top our list. In March of 1993, Mother Nature provided us with a snowstorm unlike any other. Snow fell all the way from Maine to the Gulf Coast states. It was so rare and so special, it was dubbed the name Superstorm. Our #1 Northeast snowstorm on our countdown is the Superstorm of 1993. The March 1993 Superstorm is arguably the biggest storm to strike the Northeast during the 20th century. The storm system produced significant snowfall from Maine all the way down to northern Alabama. The nor'easter had a very low barometric pressure of 964 millibars over the Delmarva Peninsula and further strengthened to around 960 millibars over New England.
The March 93 Superstorm was extraordinary. In fact, many people called it the storm of the century because the storm really had no peer in the 20th century in terms of coverage of heavy snowfall, the strength of the storm. The central pressure dropped down to 960 millibars. That's a moderate hurricane in terms of pressure and wind potential. And the snowfall from Georgia to Maine covered such a huge area. I think there was on the order of 700 deaths from the storm.
The storm was well forecast nearly a week in advance, resulting in enormous and timely response by local and state officials. One notable issue was that the storm was under-forecasted in the Gulf of Mexico and over-forecasted here in the Northeast.
One of the interesting things that I thought about that storm was a week in advance, there were really strong signals that this thing was going to go. And you know, a week in advance, you take things with a little grain of salt, and you think, well, you know, this is going to change, or this is going to be a little something that'll come along, and this will not happen. But every day, more and more of these elements started to come together, and it was like, wow. And that turned out to be one of the most memorable storms that I worked, I think. Shut down every airport on the east coast of the United States. A lot of shoveling going on. That was a biggie.
The storm's track went just to the east of the major Northeast metropolis. The track turned much of the area to sleet and rain, but the major cities from D.C. to Boston all received snow totals between 10 and 15 inches. The biggest snow accumulations were in the Appalachian Mountains, where many of the highest elevations received an astonishing 40 or more inches of snow.
The morning of the storm, the low temperature is about 10 degrees here. At the peak of the storm, we got into the middle 20s, but still it turned over to sleet, which that kind of was perplexing to some non-meteorologists. How could it be sleeting if it was 25 degrees out? But again, that deep plume of Gulf moisture drawn up into the storm brought a lot of warm air in up at cloud level. And of course, that warm air caused a changeover to sleet during the peak of the storm here. And while that held down the accumulations, it made it a heavier snow to plow and to shovel. I remember many roads around here were drifted shut with only 18 inches of snow because of the amount of sleet that was mixed in. It was just really tough for them to get the roads open. And locally, some schools were closed for a week. Meteorologically, it was what the storm produced, which was just spectacular. I remember when it was developing in the Gulf of Mexico, one thing that really told me that this storm meant business was tornadoes breaking out along the coast of Florida. From an early March winter storm, there was tornadoes. The pressure fell rapidly as it turned up along the eastern coast, and by the time it got here, it was a wind-driven snowstorm. And interestingly, sleet mixed in here during the peak of the storm, but it was so windy that even the sleet was drifting. So it was really a fantastic storm. Only 18 inches of snow fell, but a lot of that had sleet mixed in with it. I suspect if it would have been all snow, it would have been over 2 feet here.
By the time the storm was over, 270 people were killed, and the storm caused around $6 billion in damages. The widespread significant snowfall likely produced the largest distribution of significant snowfall of any storm during the 20th century. The storm shortly afterwards was titled the Storm of the Century.
Like the blizzard of 1996, the blizzard of 93 was very well forecasted. We saw it coming several days in advance. We knew it was going to be a big storm. So I was doing some forecasting for PennDOT, and this is before the internet. I had to be in the weather center to forecast. So I know the morning of the storm, when about half of the snow had fallen already, PennDOT sent a plow to my house to plow out my driveway, to plow open my road so I could get to the Millersville Weather Center to keep forecasting the second half of the storm for them. So that was pretty unique.
Therefore, Weather Watch has named the 1993 Superstorm as the #1 Northeast snowstorm of all time. Reporting for Weather Watch, I'm student meteorologist Pete Molinax.
Thanks, Pete. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but first, let's see how you do with this episode's weather trivia. Welcome back. Hershey Park is known for its entertaining attractions, including delicious chocolate, a variety of roller coasters, a zoo, and a stadium. Weather Watch went behind the scenes and spoke to park officials to find out how Hershey Park prepares and deals with severe weather. Shane Brown has all the details.
Take just a short drive north of our Weather Watch headquarters in south central Pennsylvania, and you'll arrive at one of the state's most well-known towns, the sweetest place on earth, Hershey, Pennsylvania. Nestled in the small Dauphin County town are some familiar attractions, including the home of Hershey's famous chocolate, the Giant Center, Chocolate World, and the world's only chocolate-themed amusement park, Hershey Park. Opened in 1907, Hershey Park has expanded to accompany over 60 thrilling rides and coasters, a full zoo, an amphitheater, and a stadium. With nearly 2 million visitors entering the park every year, it's no wonder then that a good deal of preparation must take place when Mother Nature has a change in plans. We spoke with officials from park operations to find out what goes on behind the scenes to prepare and deal with inclement weather.
Well, weather is one of those things that, that's one of the things that we look at first thing in the morning. What's our day going to be like weather-wise? Because we have to know when to anticipate incoming weather patterns so we know how to operate the rides or shut them down at the appropriate time, depending on the severity of the storm and how quick something might be coming in here.
We all kind of have to be amateur meteorologists here when we're on duty. and you learn how the weather interacts with the region.
Weather is something on the forefront of everyone's mind that works here at Hershey Park. We're constantly monitoring the weather conditions, both for the aspect that it allows us to anticipate how many people we may see in a given day, but also so that we have adequate time to be able to react if we are going to get severe weather moving into Hershey Park, that we can get the guests that are here into a safe location.
Different rides are impacted by different types of weather. Obviously, the hot temperatures play a little bit of a role as far as how the rides operate, but colder temperatures really impact the rides more than anything else.
Park maintenance and ride operators follow a sliding intensity scale to determine which rides to close and which ones to keep open when bad weather is impending.
Once we start getting lightning within about 20 miles, that's when we'll usually go into what we call Phase 1 close, and that's primarily all of our water rides. Then a Phase 2 or a Phase 1 close then would be our higher steel rides, our roller coasters and that type of things. And as the storm gets closer and closer, that'll determine what additional phases that we get into on up to a Phase 4, in which case everything is closed at that point in time until it's safe to reopen.
We are constantly monitoring the weather situations and weather conditions here at Hershey Park. We have a lot of our own proprietary instrumentation at the park to include anemometers, lightning strike detectors, and things of the like to be able to know when the weather is moving in. We have systems in place that we can see, that we can track the radar systems moving across Pennsylvania, and we can see storm cells that are popping up and be able to react to those when they're 30 or 40 miles away from us, giving us adequate time to move people into these sheltered locations.
We have written procedures as far as our storm closing procedures. So depending on what that weather condition is that's approaching us, it will generate a different weather closing conditions depending on what it is. You know, if it's just some rain that's coming, or if we have a lightning event, or if there's a hurricane coming up the coast.
In 2011, the remnants of Tropical Storm Lee brought more than 13 inches of rain to the area. Parts of the park flooded, with waters rising nearly 8 to 10 feet. That's well over the 100-year flood stage set by Hurricane Agnes in 1972.
Yes, the flooding of September in 2011 as a result of Tropical Storm Lee was quite the experience for us here in Hershey Park. We were continually monitoring the storm conditions. No one anticipated that we were going to get the 15 inches of rain directly over Derry Township that we ended up getting.
Well, back on September 7th, I believe it was, in 2011, in fact, it's a day I'll probably never forget, the ground was really damp from a lot of moisture that we had in late August and also in early September. And when Tropical Storm Lee came in, it started raining in buckets starting around noontime. But the rains came, the deluge came, it never stopped for a number of hours, and by 4 o'clock that afternoon, we were beyond our 100-year flood stage, and at that point, game over, nothing else we can do.
Thankfully, the park has seen a far greater share of good weather days when compared to bad weather days. But we wondered, is there such a thing as perfect park weather?
Perfect weather day is going to be 85 and sunny in the middle of July. So that's going to bring the people out and they're going to have a great time.
My perfect weather condition is probably around 78, 80 degrees, low humidity, blue sky. Bring them on.
So remember, the next time you're enjoying the sights, sounds, and thrills of Hershey Park, that a good deal of preparedness and dedication has gone into ensuring that your day stays sweet when the weather turns sour. Reporting for Weather Watch, I'm student meteorologist Shane Brown.
Thanks, Shane. As we near winter, a question we hear all the time is just how bad is this winter going to be? We sit down with our winter weather experts to find out what to expect from this year's winter season. Weather Watch's Curtis Silverwood has more in our winter weather outlook.
Winter is the coldest season of the year. Days are short and nights are long. For us in the Northeast, it typically means snow, but for the past 2 years, we have had nearly snowless winters, leaving us all wondering, will we ever have a traditional winter again? So we went to our winter weather experts to get all the details in our winter weather outlook. Long before the first flakes of the season fall, forecasters are already looking at a number of atmospheric signals to get an idea of what's to come.
Some of the signals that you want to look for when you're forecasting winter weather patterns or looking at a winter weather outlook are the Arctic Oscillation and the North Atlantic Oscillation. So those are two signals that are key for the Northeast, and the reason for that is that they affect pressure oscillations. And by affecting pressure oscillations, of course, it is going to create different patterns in the atmosphere, which then can impact the pattern of the jet stream, bringing either much colder air into our area or much warmer air. Bringing in cold or warm air can affect the type of precipitation you get, so it will be the difference between snow and rain.
One of the most well-known and significant of these patterns is the ENSO, responsible for developing both El Niño and La Niña patterns.
The other oscillation that we look for is ENSO, or the El Niño Southern Oscillation. So either you look for what we call a cold phase, or La Niña, or a warm phase, El Niño. Now those are a little bit different from Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation. When we look at those oscillations, we're looking at either the Arctic Ocean or the North Atlantic. When we look at El Niño and La Niña, we're looking at the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So different places, but because of teleconnection, all of these different components can play a role and have a significant impact on winter weather patterns.
When forecasting for a long-range outlook, forecasters need to use these teleconnections along with climatology to determine what their area will see. For us, it can mean the difference between a dull or active winter.
Coming out of last winter, of course, which was one of our 10 least snowy winters on record, there's been a lot of anticipation. Will this winter bring us some real snowstorms, since we saw none last winter? It's hard to imagine we would have another dud of a winter, because the Pacific Ocean, which is one of our major signals of winter weather and storm tracks, the equatorial Pacific has changed dramatically from last winter when we were in a La Niña to this winter, pretty much a neutral phase, which means we'll probably have some active periods and then some inactive periods. So that's the starting point. It looks like more storminess than we had last winter, but probably not a hyperactive storm track. So I like to talk about the normal range of snowfall here in Lancaster being between 20 and 30 inches. And I think that's the kind of winter we have in store.
So the million-dollar question, what will our area see?
Near average snowfall, and I think temperatures, maybe when it's all said and done, will actually average a degree or two above normal this winter. That is not really significant, but it may speak to my belief that the warm spells might slightly outnumber the cool spells this winter. So in terms of that temperature roller coaster ride, maybe there's a few more ups than there are downs. But again, overall this winter will be colder and will be snowier than last winter.
So there you have it. Don't expect to see a repeat of the past two winters, but expect to see some ups and downs, leaving us in the end with a typical Northeast winter. Reporting for Weather Watch, I'm student meteorologist Curtis Silverwood.
That will do it for this episode and the second season of Weather Watch. Please be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at the addresses shown below. You can also check out our website, muweatherwatch.com, to see our entire collection of episodes. On behalf of our entire cast and crew, I'm Megan Nielsen, and thanks for watching this season. We'll see you in February.